That's fair. Dislike. After leaving home, Tarrare was forced to beg and steal just to satisfy his gargantuan appetite.
Oh, this
Inevitably,
poor guy.
people began to take notice of him, and
Oh, they're
eventually
not
he
gonna
landed
kill
a
him,
job
are
as a
they?
street performer in
Oh,
Paris.
okay.
People would hand
Good.
Tarrare entire baskets of apples,
Okay,
eggs, and even
I mean,
wine
becoming
corks,
a
and
freak
watch in
isn't the
delight as
worst
he
thing
horked them
ever,
down
right?
without the slightest hesitation.
Welcome to Chicago Reacts. Today the Chicago crew will be reacting to Salmonella's Tarrare, the hungriest man in history. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel to see more of our content.
Hey kids, I think we can all agree that there are few pastimes more grotesque than competitive eating. The concept of a bunch of guys pushing their anatomy to its limits just for sport leaves a bad taste in my mouth in more ways than one.
It's rough
But
to
imagine
watch,
if
I
these
agree.
men didn't adopt this habit just for fun. Imagine if some gross biological error forced them to eat like this for their entire life.
Tragedy.
Introducing
Ay,
Tarrare.
ay.
Tarrare was born in France around 1772 to a poor farming family. It's said that his appetite was so voracious that, by his teens, Tarrare could eat an entire quarter of a cow carcass in a single day. You'd think he'd be like
Wow.
mega obese, but no, he only weighed 100 pounds by age
Wow.
17. However, there were still a few things that stood out about Tarrare appearance-wise. For one, he had a huge, stretched-out mouth with horribly stained teeth. He could reportedly fit 12 eggs in his cheeks at once, much like a chipmunk keeping its chipmunk eggs warm. Additionally, when Tarrare was full, he'd get a crazy octomom gut going, and any other time, he'd have a huge flap of stretched-out skin hanging around his waist. He also stank to high hell, even by 18th century French peasant standards. He was described as reeking, quote, to such a degree that he could not be endured within the distance of 20 paces.
Oh,
So between
that's
all
funny.
this and his horrendous outhouse flooding
Must have been
dumps, his
sad for
family
him,
had had
though.
enough. Alright, you're eating us out of house and home here. You gotta go, man. You heard me. Kick bricks, Froggy. Wow, he just called a French person a frog. That's so racist. No, it's not. They're all French. The guy just looks like a frog is all. Oh. Well, too late. I'm already offended. That's fair. Dislike. After leaving home, Tarrare was forced to beg and steal just to satisfy his gargantuan appetite.
Oh, this poor
Inevitably, people
guy.
began to take notice of him, and
Oh, they're not
eventually he
gonna
landed
kill
a
him,
job
are
as a
they?
street performer in
Oh,
Paris.
okay.
People would hand
Good.
Tarrare entire baskets of apples,
Okay,
eggs, and even
I mean,
wine
becoming
corks,
a
and
freak
watch in
isn't the
delight as
worst
he
thing
horked them
ever,
down
right?
without the slightest hesitation. Normally, this went off without a hitch, except for one time when he suffered a severe intestinal blockage. Fortunately, the crowd was kind enough to carry him to the hospital, where he was treated with the strongest laxatives the 18th century had to offer. I would draw what happened next, but it would probably get my channel deleted, so let's just picture it for a few moments.
I'm so glad that he had adequate health care to cover his,
Moving on. Cut to the year
issue.
1792. This marks the beginning of the War of the First Coalition. Ever heard of it? Me neither. Who was in it? Fucking everyone. Anyway, Tarrare decided to enlist in the war. After all, maybe that profound emptiness he was feeling was just a lack of purpose in life. Turns out, no, he really was just psychotically hungry. Even after being granted quadruple rations, Tarrare would still be digging through the trash pile whenever he got the chance. After suffering extreme exhaustion, he was sent off to the military hospital in Tarrare. The staff there was so dumbfounded by the man's abilities that they decided to keep him there to run a few experiments. The first of which involved putting
What would you
Tarrare in a
learn?
room with a meal prepared for 15 people. Naturally, he ate the entire thing and immediately fell asleep. Next, they presented him with a raw eel. In response, Tarrare crushed the eel's skull between his teeth before slurping down the entire creature in one go. Now, this is hair-clenchingly horrifying for a couple of reasons. Firstly, he put a whole frickin' eel in his stomach, but secondly, there had to be some point during digestion where the meat was gone but the bones still remained. Now, for those of you who don't know, an eel skeleton looks like this. That means Tarrare had all of those needle-sized ribs
Eel is
stabbing into the
really
walls of his
tasty,
stomach
though.
at once, and he was fine. He also ripped a live cat apart with his bare hands,
Okay,
drank its
we-
blood, and ate
we'll have
everything
some
but
of
its
that.
bones, and then later gagged up the fur and skin like an owl, but, you know, that's neither here nor
That's
there.
a little bit
After
more
reviewing our
practical.
data, I've come to the scientific conclusion that, yeah, we got a goddamn demon on our hands. But as we all know, with
Scientists
great devour
do
comes great
weird things in
responsibility.
documents.
Since Tarrare was still technically enlisted, the military decided to utilize his abilities for the greater good. Hey Tarrare, it's me,
Couldn't you
the
just
general. Listen,
cannibalize
could you
the
eat this
enemies?
box with a note in it for me? If you do it, we'll give you a wheelbarrow full of bull organs. Lo and behold, 2 days later, he passed the container in mint condition and was given his reward as promised. With this proof of concept, they made him an official spy and sent him into Prussia with a document in his belly
Like I
to be
said,
delivered to
horrible.
an imprisoned
This could be a
French
funny,
colonel.
dark
Unfortunately, there are a couple things Tarrare couldn't do that are generally important when sneaking into another country.
Yeah.
A, he couldn't speak German,
Yeah.
and B, it's pretty hard to maintain a low profile when you're running around like a madman, wolfing down
Yeah.
garbage and mutilating small animals. So he ended up being captured by the enemy.
Worst
Initially,
spy
he kept
ever.
his mouth shut, for once, but after a whipping and a day in jail, Tarrare gave in. After confessing that he did, in fact, have vital intelligence snaking its way through his GI tract, the Prussians chained him to a latrine until the box emerged 30 hours later. The note wasn't actually anything important, so they just mock executed him,
Wow.
gave him a severe beating, and sent him on his way. After all that, Tarrare returned to life at the hospital, desperate for a cure for his condition, but nothing they ever tried worked. Meanwhile, the man's endless hunger continued to get him into all sorts of trouble. He'd often sneak out of the hospital to eat the scraps behind the local butcher and fight stray dogs in the alley for their precious garbage. He'd also seek out patients undergoing bloodletting in order to take all their life juice for himself. On several occasions, he was even caught attempting to eat bodies in the mortuary. By this point in my research, I was so desensitized to this guy that I didn't even bat an eye when I first read that. I was just like, alright.
I
Guess he must have been hungry. Anyway, the hospital staff
cannibalism would be a
begrudgingly
thing.
tolerated Tarrare's buffoonery until one day when he went too far.
like
Well,
Reed from
Tarrare, you've only
Frankenstein.
had 3 mess hall raids, 4 miscellaneous trash-related mishaps, and 1 cadaver defiling. So I'd say, so far, this week's been pretty good. Doctor, we should probably inform you that a 14-month-old child has gone missing from their room.
No.
Tarrare, look at me. Did you eat a fucking baby? Tarrare was promptly kicked out of the hospital and spent 4 years out and about doing, whatever horrific shit you can imagine. When he came back, he was suffering from advanced tuberculosis and died shortly after arrival. During his autopsy, the surgeons found that, when they looked into his mouth, they could see all the way down his throat and into his stomach cavity. As you can imagine, his whole abdominal region was profoundly deformed. Basically, if this is a normal human, this is what they found inside Tarrare. Just like the man's mind, we can see that around 90% is devoted towards food and 10% towards everything else. So, moral of the story here is that, no, you know what, not even I
wonder
can
how
find
old he
anything
was when he died.
resembling a moral here. Not all stories have a point to them.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're just sad and disgusting from beginning to end. And now a word from our sponsor.
this
As you
YouTube
can
channel
probably
again.
tell, I'm a very visual person when it comes to learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. That poor guy. I feel bad for him. I can't imagine being ravenously hungry all of the time. Oh, wait a minute. Yes, I can. But like to that level feels very, I don't know, like my heart kind of goes out to him. I mean, I know he's dead now, but like that must have been a crummy existence.
I don't know why I really needed to know that poor person's existence. He ate a baby though, so that's a line. That's a line.
Yes, this is a real person. And this was the first video in which Daniel actually introduced me to salmonella. And yeah, it's horrifying that this person was born with this kind of birth defect. And apparently, upon further research, there's actually a few other individuals that had the same kind of traits as well. Not as bad as Tarrare's was, but I only can imagine what life was like for him, where here he is stuck with this condition, and he was born like this as a kid, always hungry, always with food on his mind. So his actions, of course, throughout life as he reached adulthood, are, of course, are inexcusable, but the way his body was set up, I mean, maybe with modern medicine, he could have gotten treatment maybe early on to avoid this tragedy. And it's very sad, but you could make a very funny dark humor movie about Tarrare and his adventures.
One thing that I'm actually wondering about is whether if they can't really do anything about it now, but today they'd probably look at the microbes in his gut and to see if there was something else going on there. But that's really quite extraordinary. The fact that he was actually allowed to continue functioning. I mean, this whole bit about the baby going missing, I'm surprised they let him out. Wow.
He's good. I did this guy's stuff a whole lot, but it's like you said in the beginning, it's like educational but funny. And he covers such a wide array of topics that I would never in my right mind think like, oh yeah, I'm gonna look this up. This is something that I need to know. So like that's super cool. Also, this one time, whenever I worked for the news, we sat for like 2 hours and watched a hot dog eating contest unfold, and I couldn't eat hot dogs for like a solid half of a year, but just because it was so grotesque to watch these grown men just like shove hot dog, because they like take the hot dog out and then they dip the bread in the water so that they can stay hydrated and be able to swallow everything. And it just turns into this like gross, messy, ew thing. Oh, poor Tarrare. What a guy.
Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe and check out our other videos. If you want us to react to something, write to us in the comments below. See you next time.